Hey everybody, it's Piano Man Steve Lungrin, founder of LearningMusicIsFun.com, where we're teaching the piano players to play rock, pop, and country. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Conversations with the Masters. Our master today is Chris Nole, who I'm very proud to have on the show. Chris has worked with a lot of pretty famous and amazing people. Among his credits would be Shelby Lynn, Faith Hill, Travis Tritt, Delbert, McClinton, Emmy Lou Harris, Don Williams, and John Denver, just to name a few. He's done work in the studio and on the road for a number of notable people and has a lot of insights to share with us. So I'm going to stop yapping and get right to the interview. Chris, how you doing today? Thanks for being with us.
It's good to be here, Steve. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Well, I'm going to take a page out of the James Lipton Inside the Actor's Studio book here and say, let's begin at the beginning. Chris, where were you born, man?
I was born in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge.
Okay. Now, is that in like the southern part of the state, or is it near Philly?
It's just south of Philadelphia.
Okay.
I believe my dad was in the military at the time, and it was a military hospital.
Okay. Very cool. So were you kind of like an army brat? Did you move around a lot, or did you kind of have a more? Did you grow up in lower Pennsylvania there?
We didn't move around a lot. I was born in Pennsylvania, and Mom and Dad relocated to South Jersey, and he worked out of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I was in the same house since I guess I was born, or shortly after I was born, until I moved to Nashville. So. Pretty stable little environment.
Very cool. Now, did you come from a musical family, or did you start this trend?
I thought I started it, but I've learned otherwise. My mom was an aspiring singer as a youth, and things were different back then. She wasn't really encouraged to pursue the traveling and hanging out with bands and all that back in her day. So she never went down that road. And I had an uncle in the same family that was a pretty big deal out in Vegas as a piano player, singer, Tony Costa. And we recently lost him, but he was a really talented dude.
Very cool.
So there's a little bit in my family, yes.
You just didn't necessarily know it when you became a musician.
I thought I was starting the whole thing myself. I'm really special.
We all want to believe that, don't we?
Yes, yes.
So now, what kind of formal training did you get when you were a kid, if any?
That's a cool question. I begged for a piano since my earliest years, since I could remember. I just wanted a piano. I was amazed by the instrument, just by the size of it and the black and white keys. There's something really drew me to that amazing wooden, metal, felt beast. I just wanted to learn how to play it. And finally, I was doing pretty good in school, and my dad cut a deal with me if I got really good grades that I would finally get this piano I've been asking for years. And at age 9, I got one, and I think they bought it out of a newspaper ad, and it was a baby grand. It was small, but to me, it was like Liberace, totally huge piano. I think it was only a 5 or 6 foot, but to me it looked like a concert grand in the house. And I shortly afterwards start taking piano lessons from a lady just a few houses down the road from me. It was a Wednesday afternoon at around 3 o'clock after school. I remember my first lesson walking down the street, wondering what was going to happen.
Nice. Nice. Now, in this particular vein, did you become a pretty good sight reader? I mean, or did you kind of learn the fundamentals and start developing your ear and start ignoring what you were being taught like a lot of piano players do?
I eventually got to that spot you're mentioning, and I'll touch on that. But at first, I just really wanted to learn about, where middle C was and all that. John Thompson, remember them John Thompson books?
Went through several of those. Think we all have. They were red, weren't they?
Yeah, I still have a few tucked away in my archives.
Yeah.
But no, I don't remember much except I was encouraged by my teacher that I was excelling quick and I was doing well. So I was taken to it. It was working. It took many years later to develop good timing and respecting how many beats are actually in a measure and stuff like that. But I think I think I did well with learning my notes and reading at a pretty good quick pace.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So someone sat, a notated chart in front of you. You could,
Oh well, okay. Skip
because I couldn't.
ahead 34 years. No, I've made my living here in Nashville mainly more with improvisations at recording sessions, of course based around the chord structure and what the rest of the band is doing. But no, I'm not a great reader because I haven't applied it the past few
Right.
decades.
And that's an important point that I make a lot when I'm talking in my lessons. Not that I'm trying to take the conversation in this direction, but I want to point it out to my viewers. I say all the time, this is something I can't do right now, but it's not because I can't do it or you can't do it at all. It's about what you are practicing, what you're applying, what skill set you're putting into practice on a regular basis. That's what you're going to get good at. Nobody is a virtuoso at all of it at the same time because you can't practice it all the time.
There's not that many hours in a day. You just can't do it all.
Yeah, so very, very good insight. I like to hear about that because I know there are a lot of people, particularly on some of these big rock tours or big pop tours right now, who are exceptional sight readers, but it's because they're in these really intricate arrangements and their job is to play very, very specific signature lines and to do a
Oh,
very, and it's very orchestrated. There's not a lot of improv going on in those settings these days, so they're getting a lot of good sight readers out on the road in these things. But if you're going to play in a honky-tonk country band, you probably
right.
better be able to just fill some space. Otherwise, you're not going to cut it.
Yeah, my neighbor is a great sight reader. I'm starting to transcribe some of my piano tunes, and he's proofing them for me. But this guy is one of them guys, and he tours with all the big Broadway shows and everything. And a few years ago, he came down and asked me if I wanted to cover a few nights with Jersey Boys. And I was going, wow, that sounds exciting. But so he comes down to my house and slaps this 100-page book on my desk with every single note transcribed, written out, and everything's on cue with the band. And I said, Jeff, I could probably do this with a week or two of rehearsal, but I do not feel comfortable jumping in the pit just playing this. And, he does that every day.
Yep.
So, we just live in different worlds, that's all.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with either approach, but I think I'm probably more as a player in your camp in terms of what my skill set is and what I would be comfortable doing on the drop of a hat than that. But, like I say, there's a place for all of it, so that's cool.
That's right. And we could do that. If we invested the time and got back to reading every day and practicing that craft every day, yeah, it's still here. I just haven't applied it.
And it just depends too, and this is a big thing I point out to people too, is before you start practicing music, figure out what kind of music you want to play, because it does take practical application. And I don't know a single person on earth who will take the time to apply something consistently long enough to be good at it if it's not something they really want to learn how to do. There has to be that. It's got to be something compelling enough that it'll pull you toward it, so you're not just having to push the cart up the hill. So, and for me, it hasn't ever been that. As much as I respect that talent, it's just that's not where my interest level was. So I'm good at the stuff I'm interested in, and have been interested in.
And that's what makes you get better at that, because it pulls you every day. Yeah.
Exactly. And as your interests change, you develop skill sets and new things that you try to do. So it's kind of a process and a journey we go on. So who were your big musical influences when you were growing up?
I've been asked this a lot, and I think about it more and more as I get older. But I remember we had a small little house with a piano in the living room, and upstairs was where we would soak in all the records. We had record players, and honestly, I remember Elvis live at Madison Square Garden. I wore that record out. I didn't know who James Burton and Glenn D and Jerry Sheffield all, and worked with them later, which was surreal for me because they went to John Denver's band.
The Take Care of Business band.
Yeah. John hired James, Glenn, and Jerry Sheff. But yeah, I wore that record out. I knew all the licks, and I would wear Jerry Sheff out sometimes at sound check, asking him about things.
Did you ever meet Jerry's son, Jason? He's in Chicago now.
I did. We actually went to see him with Chicago. Boy, he's a singing fool and great bass player. And wow.
Slapping. He's a slapper. Yeah.
I think he lives here in Nashville now, I was told. Not totally sure about that. But influences, I always had, we had Bill Withers cranking up that funky clavinet, and Billy Preston, and of course my little brother was blasting Kiss all the time. But I listened to everybody. I really went through a Brian Wilson phase, but his chord voicings are probably the most advanced in pop music, in my opinion. I mean, there's Steely Dan, of course, but I mean, Brian Wilson's, what he would do with the bass in relationship to the chords blew me away. Still does.
Yeah. Pet Sounds is one of my favorite records of all time.
Yeah, we're so lucky to have had people like him come along and make that music, because it's magical.
Very nice. So when did you get to start playing gigs?
Well, I went from the fruit farm. I worked picking peaches and apples in South Jersey to the new mall where I would start teaching piano. And it was a big step up for me. I got off the tractor and actually dressed up and went in and helped people learn how to read music and play music. And so that was my first musical paying gig, and then my life changed. I got offered a full-time 6-night-a-week gig at the local honky tonk. And to me, it was big money, and it was big exposure, and it was a change of lifestyle, and I went for it, and I never turned back.
I love it. One thing that's interesting to me that cracks me up, everyone's so amazed when they just find out that, so what do you do for a living? And you go, I'm a musician. They go, is that all you do? You say, yeah. And they're like, you actually just make a living doing that? And you go, yeah. And they're so impressed because, most people can't even imagine how it's possible to do that. And of course, the real success for a lot of people when you get into it, I mean, we'd all like more money at the end of the day, but just being able to, sustain yourself by making music is sort of the end game for most of us out there in some way.
Yeah, if you could pay your bills, hopefully buy a house and a car at some point, and have a semi-normal income and be happy, I'm still impressed by that.
Yeah. Exactly. And of course, have enough money to buy the toys you got to have so that you can do the job.
Yeah, and that never ends, sad to say.
I know. It reminds me of Jeff Foxworthy talking about somebody who's broke when he says, we've got the yard sale furniture and the mattress on the floor and then the $5,000 stereo because we're going hungry, but we got tunes, Every musician that I know is living in a dive, but they've got a world-class studio somewhere in their little apartment.
Yeah, audio rig, whatever their instruments are. Yeah, that seems to come first, don't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that would have been your big break when you got to teach and then you got to go play at this honky tonk. But when was your first big break inside the big music industry, would you say?
Man, it happened slow. It happened really slow, and I'm grateful it came slow because I was able to hone my skills as that approached. Basically, I did the honky tonk scene in the Northeast for a few years. I booked my band. We did 4 nights a week, 3 nights a week, this and that, and we thought we were going places, and we had a few moments, but I kind of hit a wall eventually. And my friend who lived in Nashville got me thinking about coming to Nashville, and this was in the late '80s. I flew down, took a look around, went to Union, shook a few hands. He was plugged in. He was a singer, so he took me around. And I said, dang, I'm coming down. I'm just going to do it. I hated leaving my area and my comfort zone, but something really told me it was time. And I drove down to Nashville with a mattress in the back of my truck, my keyboards, and about $400. And I'll try to speed this scenario up how I got to a bigger level.
I'm loving the story at the pace it's at. You just tell it however you want.
So, I must say I moved down. I got another club gig. And, I'm riding around in a van playing regionally, riding at night. And, it was tough. It's hard work. Showing up tired, loading gear, and then getting a shower and doing 4 sets. Wow. What a life. But it toughens you up, and I hone my skills. Anyway, flash ahead another year or two, I got an offer with a bigger act who had a record deal. It was a vocal group called Ride the River, vocals and instruments. We played everything, we sang. And we had like a top 40 song on the radio, and we were playing bigger clubs, the big honky tonks, Phoenix, Denver. We had a bus. And I was making pretty good money, and I'm playing all the big honky tonks across the country, and we were rubbing noses with all the bigger acts because we were warming up for them and stuff. You know how that kind of sneaks up on you.
Number 2 on the bill kind of thing.
Yeah. Just about every other week we'd be on the bill with a more established act. So anyway, that got me introduced and rubbing shoulders with more established people with record deals and music on the radio. Anyway, I did that for 2 or 3 years. I paid all my bills, worked steadily. The key to being a musician is work, right?
Yep.
Practice is good, but you got to get out and work too.
Yep.
So I got I think a cold call from the keyboard player from Alabama. They were huge.
Right.
John Maddock. I mean, he knew me from around Nashville and asked me if I could sub for this new artist named Shelby Lynn. And I went and did it, and she liked how I played. I was impressed with, she's signed to, I think she was on Columbia Records or something. She had an actual record deal and was actually on the radio. Wow, I'm playing with someone like that, And so she offered me the gig, and I played with Shelby for a year or two and played a bunch of TV shows. And that made me feel like, hey, I finally moving up the food chain.
Right.
And from Shelby, I've met many other artists, and on and on and on. But Nashville is a good location for this.
Yeah, because they're all centralized. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to be an actor, you probably better be in Hollywood because that's where it's all happening. Or
Yeah.
New York, depending on what kind of acting you want to do.
Yeah, and when I moved to Nashville, Los Angeles was still kicking, and New York City. But I got to say, since the past 25 years, I think Nashville really is the music city for live sessions and touring acts, and it's really kicking.
Yeah, for more than just country these days, too.
Yeah, I mean, we got Mr. Jack White here. We got, Sheryl Crow, Steve Winwood. I mean, they're all here.
It's where all the writers are, too. And that's really where music starts, is someone's got to write a song. And then
It all starts with a song. You got that right.
So it's really it's a cool place. The thing that makes me sad about it is I hope that I hope that the biggest small town in the world doesn't become a big city at some point, because that the culture there will change forever if that happens. But that's such a cool place. And anyone who's watching this, if you haven't gone to Nashville, just an experience, just walk around and check out the live music there and whatnot. You really owe it to yourself to go check it out. It's a kick. It really is a kick down there.
Yeah, and there is a ton of country music. We got famous because of country music, but there's all kind of music too. So keep that in mind. You know.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, of course, the reason that I knew about you first and foremost is because I was a big John Denver fan. So, it's my prerogative. It's my damn show. How'd you start working with John Denver?
How did I start? Another fluke. I wish I could say I was responsible for finding the gig and landing the gig, but as in most cases, you never are. They come from the side, the left and the right, and behind you. They sneak up on you. I was doing well at the time. I was in with Faith Hill in her first band. And Faith was on fire. In 5 weeks, she became a household name. We were doing Letterman, Leno, and this girl was off to the races. And I finally got in this, rocket ship pointed upwards with music. So anyway, I had met, back up a year before Faith, I had been rubbing elbows with a man named Chris O'Connor who was coming into Nashville on occasion to produce records. Little did I know he was John Denver's best friend and tour manager. And I met him through a rock band I was playing with, the Swamp Honkies, which we were infamous for a while. And we made some really good music, but that kind of ran its course. Chris O'Connor, who we call KO, actually produced a few sides on the Swamp Honkies and helped us in the studio and loved the band and was trying to make some headway for us. But because of that meeting and relationship, KO knew there were some changes on the horizon with the John Denver band. And of course, being close around him and working with him, he thought I'd be a super candidate for a spot playing with John. I think he liked the new blood, the younger blood. I would play synth strings, and John wanted the more than just acoustic piano. He wanted to expand the sound a little bit, and I was like gung-ho, yeah, I could do that. So I think KO and John made some decisions to bring in some new guys, and I was one of them.
Yeah, because his band had been fairly stable for 15, 20 years or something.
Yeah. John had many renditions of his band. He had, of course, the heyday with, John Summers and Steve Weisberg and all. I mean, An Evening with John Denver's classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that sound was just amazing, and it put John on the map.
Hal Blaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That guy, there's a guy who could write a book. Probably has.
I think he did. But anyway, so yeah, John went from the real bluegrass sound to the more electric Elvis sound, and then in the early '90s, he went back to Pete Huttlinger playing a lot of mandolin and banjo and acoustic, and me playing acoustic grand, of course, and some synth string lines, like some of that Lee Holdridge stuff, and I thought it was a good sound.
Oh, it was fantastic. One of the things that was so much fun, see, for the viewers out there, I saw Chris with John in August of 1995 in Omaha, Nebraska. I was 17. I'd just barely discovered John, actually, because at the time, the thing is, if you do the study, you find out John Denver was one of the biggest things that ever happened in the 1970s. And then, of course, you get oversaturated in the market and the radio doesn't want to play anymore at some point. And our culture changed and all this stuff. So he's this kind of a big name still, but not really making hit records through my childhood. Yeah. And so I didn't know him. and the only thing I'd ever heard him do was plant a tree. And so I didn't have much of an opinion about him. And then they did that wildlife concert that got played on A&E. And, you know, I was like, God, this guy's a hell of a singer. And I kind of liked some of this music. And then I found out that he was going to be in Omaha. So I said, well, let's see if I can go. And so I went, and it really blew me away because the band you guys had when you filmed the wildlife concert was a little more extended. You had James Burton come back in, some extra vocalists, and a little string section, and all that stuff, which of course I'll let you talk about. I don't want to dominate it, but when I saw you guys playing, it was just your 5-piece band, and I was blown away by the amount of sound that was coming out of that, and it was just wide open because it's. And the thing I loved about John's music, because I play piano in a similar way, I think, to what he did with the acoustic guitar. It's like it all starts here, and you just start adding layers around it, you know. But John could do the show by himself if he had to, because that's always at the foundation of what's going on. And it was just this great wide open sound with Machito and Alan Daramo and all of those guys. So talk about doing the wildlife concert. Was that kind of what's that experience like when you know you're being filmed and recorded and you're making a record all at the same time?
Man, I was younger back then. That was a while back, maybe 20 years ago. But it was a big deal. This was the beginning of John Denver's comeback, and boy was he due, and boy was he singing great. You seen the special, you seen him live. Wow, John was really blossoming into his second half of his career, and there was big plans. And we all regret not seeing that all come to fruition. But we did start on it, and the wildlife concert was the beginning. It was with Sony Legacy. We went up to New York City for a week to rehearse, and he was interviewing, and the band was practicing, and I don't remember how much pressure was on us, but I could guarantee that there was pressure on us, you know, and everyone wanted to do a great job, and I think we did. I mean, nothing's perfection. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. Sometimes it slows me down, but yeah, the pressure was not enough to hamper us, but we all wanted to be on our best game, and we had 2 nights to do it. I think we taped the same show twice, so we got 2 takes. But it was comfortable. The director and producer, everyone was on our side, and John was in a good mood, and John was determined to do a good job, and I'm so lucky to have been a part of that. And it still airs. It's on PBS for fundraisers and clips all over the internet, and it was a big show, and I'm happy to be on it.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and I remember that. That was when I first took note of you, actually, because I was really impressed by some of the you know, the thing was, it's like I didn't really know much about John, but as I was listening, some of the hits, you know, I'd heard, and I just didn't know they were him at the time. So I knew Sunshine and Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Rocky Mountain High, but there were some of these other tunes that really were cool that I'd never heard before, like Eagles and Horses, and I loved the piano work on that, and I loved some of the. And then when I went to go see you guys live, you did even more tunes that I'd never heard before, and there was just some really interesting places to feature keys that were a lot of fun. So, do you have anything that you remember really fondly getting to play that you got to put your own spin on?
I do. I have many memories. And I like to start by saying, when you initially think of John Denver and his music, you don't think piano. You think, you know, coffee shop, folk, guitar, vocal, and boy, he did that. But he liked to cut people loose, and he trusted people's instincts and their professionalism. And John was one of the first recording artists to open my eyes that, hey, the band really can contribute and make the show cool and different. And he never he would want some things like the record, like signature lines, of course, you need to support whatever's going on, but he really encouraged you to do your own thing. And I was lucky to do a few records with him in the studio too, where you're actually making up the parts.
Mhm.
Being around him, you always felt I didn't feel constrained. I always wanted to make him happy and play the right thing. But yeah, live he let us play, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I love that because I remember a lot of the arrangements you guys were playing. You kind of had your own take on it. Did I lose you? There you are.
Sorry,
Oh, that's all right. No,
internet connection, man.
it happens. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of that in the editing
Just
room.
put a little smiley face in when I go out, but when I
Yeah,
black out.
no problem. But no, I like that because I remember the arrangements. I thought one of the things I liked was this doesn't sound exactly like the record because you don't have the same ensemble they had on the record. But
Yeah.
instead of just trying to copy it, you just did something that was appropriate for the group that you had. And I thought, I've carried that forward as a musician myself. I don't try to be all things to all people. I put the best face on what I've got, you
Yeah.
know, and I dig that a lot.
That is a great point, Steve. As you mature as a musician, you're not afraid to use what you got on that night or that stage or this guitar player or this drummer. Go with it, and it don't. You're not copying anything. You're creating in the moment, and enjoy it.
Absolutely. So let's talk about. I don't want to spend all this. I appreciate you going in depth with me there a little bit about the John Denver experience, but actually that was a means to an end. So when you're touring for a well-known artist like this, and you're in the band, what everyone obviously knows about the concerts, but what's life on the road really like? I mean, what are your other responsibilities that go into being on a big tour like that? Because you went all over the world with John. It wasn't just a few dates, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a normal internationally is different than a normal day domestically. A normal day over here in the states, we use tour buses, and it's not uncommon to load up at night. Get on the bus at 10, 11, or midnight. Uh, say your highs, have a snack or a drink, and go to bed. And 7, 8, 9 hours later, you wake up in the city you'll be playing at that night. And if you're lucky, you got some sleep. When you sleep good on the bus, life is good. Your day is good. Uh, that's always an issue between roads or adapting from your bed at home and stuff like that. But yeah, so usually show up tour bus at the hotel, bail off, get breakfast, coffee. If you're lucky, hit the room, and the crew will go to the venue, start working on the stage, lighting, whatever they need to deal with, and band shows up for a sound check a few hours later.
Okay. So do you is the kind of like the publicity promotion that pretty much on the shoulders of the solo artists themselves, media
Yeah,
interviews and stuff?
yeah, and I'll tell you, I've worked with a few that don't even mess with it anymore because it's very tiring and it consumes your day, and they want to save their energy for the show. New artists got to play that game 24/7. Whether you're golfing with the DJ in that town, having a lunch, going to the station, you might drag some band members along with you to play live, plug the show, and they have a full day from pulling in the morning to wrapping the show up at 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m., and then you do it all over again.
And
It's
autographing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
yeah.
CDs and promo photos.
Yeah, not to mention, yeah, God bless the ones that go out after the show and sign for an hour. I mean, jeez.
It's hard work. A lot of people don't realize how hard people work to actually become famous.
Yeah, now as a supporting musician, sometimes you're exempt from that. You could kind of hide away and, do your sound check and do your show, and you're not really responsible for interviews. If you are the recording artist, if you are selling your records, then of course it's double the work. Yeah.
And now, tell me this: did you, when you started out in this business, did you want the kinds of gigs that you have gotten, or did you want to be a singer too?
Wow. I grew up singing in bands, and I do have my own vocal projects, piano projects. I do pursue my own artistry and creativity. But living in Nashville, it seems like the phone was always ringing to be a supporting musician on one tour or the other. And I thought it complemented my career as a songwriter and a performer. So I never shucked any of that. But yeah, I wanted to pursue being the focal point, the star, the singer. You know, I don't have the answer to that question. I do not know. I just kind of know what I've been doing and I'm very grateful for what I've been involved in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I just wondered because you are actually a pretty accomplished vocalist. I could tell from some of the stuff that I watched. It seems like you bore the responsibility for, if I'm not mistaken, some high harmonies for John,
I did, yeah.
and that's not necessarily the easiest singing in the world because he's already singing up there a ways to begin with. So I know you've got some
Yeah.
chops there.
Well, thank you very much. I work at it every day. I mean, if you're with an act where you get to sing a lot, of course your chops are better. If you're with another act where they have backup singers and don't utilize what you do, then you don't use your muscles as much. But singing is all about using the chops. You're a great singer, by the way. I heard your Eagles and Horses, so
Thank you.
I could tell you use your muscles and your got everything in order
Appreciate
there.
that. Well,
Yeah.
and you're right. You tend to be, your stamina tends to be as much as you're used to using it. I'm every time I play a gig anymore, it seems like it's a 3 or 4 hour engagement. So that's what I'm used to doing. But I really, really hope in the near future, Chris, that I get to the point where I play for a couple hours. I would love to lose a little bit of my stamina.
Yeah. Well, that pays off for you, man. There's nothing better than singing for hours and hours, a few nights a week. The guys that I see doing it, or girls, or whoever, are fabulous singers, and they're using the diaphragm and lungs and throat, and
Yeah. You just got to do what you have to survive.
yeah. And
you
then
know.
there's that. Yeah.
So, but that's cool. So, when you're in a backing band for an artist like Faith Hill or Travis Tritt, let me see here. No, I already asked you that question. Sorry. Walk us through how long you might be out on a typical tour stretch before you get to come home for a short time.
The short answer is these days, 2 weeks is a good run. When for someone who's been in the business as long as I have, 3 or 4 weeks really becomes tiring. But keep in mind, you're out there to work where you work. Uh, the better things are, pay wise. But I have a home, a pretty active studio business. I'm married, so you know, 1 or 2 weeks is good for me. There's no rules though. I mean, the big acts, Bieber and they'll block out the whole summer, and I heard Mannheim Steamroller, the Christmas thing from I don't know November to New Year's Eve is blocked out. You can't even go home on a day off. I mean, you are committed, but they make almost a year's pay in a short time. So as a working musician, you just factor it all together and see what works best for your lifestyle.
Right. Very good point. And that's, not to get into motivational speakers, but I do think I want to point this out for the people watching who are considering a career in music. Tony Robbins has a thing where he says anyone who's going to make a major change has to, one, they have to get clear about what they want. Two, they have to tell themselves a compelling enough story about it so they move toward it. And three, they got to resolve their internal conflicts. And one of the internal conflicts you're going to have as a musician is being away from home. And you got to decide, if that's something that you can't stomach, that's fine, but you're not going to be able to make that much money without ever being away from home. I mean, your income is going to go up by how much you're willing to make that sacrifice. And I'm not going to tell anybody what the right or wrong answer for that is, but it's a conflict that you better get past in your head, because if you're going to get big work, it's going to require a commitment to be away from your family from time to time, and it's not always easy to do.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. And, I used to think I was the only guy in the world traveling away from home, or, this act out, it's all about us and we're the ones sacrificing. But I got to tell you, I see people in the military going away for 6 months or 12 months. And I see people getting on plane, business guys leaving their family every Monday, flying back on Friday night. So it seems like just economics today require you to move around. So it kind of catching up what musicians have always been doing, really. But
exactly.
If you're healthy and traveling agrees with you, I would recommend trying it and seeing if it suits your lifestyle, and maybe it'll advance your music career too.
Absolutely. Well, and it's exciting to at least go out there once and just be living out of hotels, and it's sort of a surreal life, and it can be a lot of fun. And the other thing too that a lot of people don't realize is it is okay to sort of set your boundaries and decide what you're okay with and what you're not with. And that might mean that some opportunities aren't available to you, but people have more control over their own destiny in this business than they give themselves credit for.
Amen. And quick example, I was with an act that was doing 150 shows a year plus travel days, and me and my wife decided we need a change. It was too much. So I'm fortunate now to be with an act doing half that, and it's cool. It's great.
So when you're out doing these gigs, how much of it has been just playing piano versus playing synthesizers and doing that kind of stuff?
I like to consider myself a hardcore piano player. So I'd say 90% what I do is piano. How's our audio? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm up in my studio, and the connection is downstairs, so I apologize for any editing you might have to do. But
it's cool.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Mostly piano. I love playing organ parts and whatever else is needed. But I'm a sit-down piano player.
Do most artists, have you played with very many artists that provide you with an acoustic, or do you normally have to do it on some kind of a keyboard?
Mostly keyboards. Mr. John Denver had a grand piano on the stage every night, and sometimes in a special event I'll use a grand, but no, for tuning purposes, rental purposes,
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Did John carry his own with him, or did he just ask the venue to provide one every gig?
We had a different piano every night provided by the venue. And certain makes and models were more consistent than others, and I always had to deal with it, the tone of the piano.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe that I am saying this, but I've kind of grown to become kind of a fan of playing on keyboards. It's not that I don't love acoustic pianos. I grew up playing them. But every time I play one, I go, God, you forget about these little eccentricities that you run into on the acoustic things that you just you just take it for granted. You're never going to have a sticky key, and you're never going to have a goofy tone, and you're never going to have something out of tune. And it's always, everything is perfectly balanced in terms of the amplification too, which is very hard to do.
Oh, God, that's always a challenge.
So I've kind of grown fond of playing on keyboards, as sacrilegious as that sounds to most piano players. But, when you do this for a living, the practicality of it is sort of there.
Yeah, it makes your day a lot easier. And the samples in the past 5, 6, 7 years have become amazing. amazing, and they're easy to amplify, opposed to pickups and mics and pianos, which could be just a nightmare. So, but a piano in the studio is a beautiful sound, and it's very hard still to replicate all that air. It's the air that's hard to capture.
Yes, I agree with you there. But it sure is for live work. It sure is a nice dodging of logistical problems. But
Yeah.
so, do you like working out of the studio or working on stage more, or do you like them both about equally?
I'd have to say, wow, I'm I like what I do here. I could be creative, and I could work with other wonderful creative musicians, and it's fun to capture a song or a lick or something that you've got it and you'll always have it, to play for other people. Hopefully people listen to what you're recording. But it's like a whole other animal on stage. The immediate feedback and adrenaline when you're really, really hitting it live on stage, you don't get that in the studio.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's nothing quite like the punch. And
Yeah.
you know what I've been noticing. Tell me if you've noticed this too. Uh, One thing I've been missing a little bit as I go to more concerts lately is they're getting the mix too damn good now in the concerts, and it's starting to sound like the studio to me, and I'm getting a little bit bored with it. I kind
Oh,
of miss that raw, edgy
yeah.
quality that used to be at the live venue that you couldn't get on the CD, and now I'm like, my God, I could just stay at home and listen to the CD and turn the volume up.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you on that. I would like to see new arrangements, improvisation. Uh, I always reach out a little alive, and sometimes I make what I'm going for, and sometimes I don't. And I embrace this as live music. It's supposed to be sporadic, and you're supposed to take chances.
Yep.
I don't like when everyone's playing it safe either. I do not like that.
Yeah, and they've gotten no one's using monitors on stage, and I understand why, but they're all using inner ear monitors now, and it's gotten so perfect that
Mm,
it's not as exciting to me as it used to be. It really is like listening to a CD anymore. Um, but I digress. I just
well, sad to say, on some acts you are listening to the CD.
Probably true.
Yeah.
Probably true. Yeah. Uh, Now, what I was going to say, what kind of recording software are you using in your studio these days?
Well, I'm a Steinberg man. I have Nuendo 5.5, and but I work and collaborate with producers all over the world, and they all talk to each other fine with flying files around, and Nashville seems to be a Pro Tools town. I'm guessing that's your most popular professional audio software, but Steinberg, I've been on it since the beginning, and it works great for me.
Very cool. Very cool. And I don't have any stake in this myself, so of course it doesn't matter because I'm not really trying to do much studio work for anybody other than my own little projects. But I started using software for a while, and the problem I had with it was that there were so many ways to tweak everything that I
Mm.
could never finish. I could
No,
just never finish because it would never be good enough. And so I finally said, you know what, the hell with that. And I got myself a digital drive recorder because there was less, you know what I
mm,
mean? It was like I had to accept a less perfect mix, but at least I'd get something done. I struggle to finish anything as my own producer when I'm using stuff with that kind of capability, to be perfectly honest, which is a stupid thing to say, but it really is true.
no, I totally understand. And in the commercial realm of music making, that is something we have to fight every day, because you could tweak forever. Remember, a mix is never done. You just have to stop.
George Lucas used to say movies are never made, they're abandoned.
Same principle, man.
Exactly, exactly. So, do you consider yourself kind of a natural gearhead, or are you someone who's really just a piano player and you've learned how to handle all the tech side of this because it's what you had to get a gig?
I learned out of necessity. Yes. Once I get stuff dialed in and working, I don't want to fuss with it too much because I want to. I spend way too much time learning software and loading software and figuring out software. I really want to be composing and playing. So it's a balancing act, constant balancing act.
Yeah. Well, what would you tell somebody who wants to get into this line of work who's not currently in it? What advice would you give to that person about being in the highly competitive music industry?
Oh boy. Well, if you feel the pull, do it. Don't let people talk you out of it. Do it. Do it. Allow yourself time to struggle. Allow yourself time to learn. And take advice from people that are actually doing it. And you asked me for advice, but like specific advice. If you get hung up on things, whether your audio software is giving you problems or your drum track ain't working, should I keep working with the drummer, or should I just switch to another drummer? Work on your own craft. It's a lifestyle commitment, and some months you'll make money, some months you won't make any money, but do you really feel the need to do this? I guess that's the underlying question. I always felt the need to do this, and maybe I could have been successful in other fields and areas, but I've been rewarded. I'm very grateful for my opportunities, and it's never enough, like you say. I played on this record. Why can't I play on 100 more Grammy-winning records? Or why doesn't this producer call me? What you're doing, but you really have to trust your gut and keep working on your own talent. Never stop working on it, because people will notice.
Absolutely. What characteristics would you say you've seen that are common among folks that are successful, whether it be, headliner or session musician or just whatever? I mean, is there a common thread that you see between people who get into the industry and make a career out of it?
Man, that's a great question, and I have two answers for you. I'm sure I could think of 5 different answers, but headliner star mentality is different than a craftsman, whether it be an audio engineer, a supporting musician, production. I've noticed that a lot of the big talents who become, whether solo artists or
the front man in a band.
The front man, yeah, are really focused mainly on what they are doing, whether it's writing, singing, or posing on stage. And the other breed of successful musician, session player, whatever, seems to always be honing his craft and collaborating and listening to what others are doing and trying to complement that. So they seem to be 2 different approaches that work together well. They're like symbiotic, because the headliner needs the engineer and musician, and the musician and engineer need the headliner. So the personalities kind of fit each other.
It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like one thing they have in common, though, is determination and tenacity and patience, in a way.
I've seen a few headliners without patience.
Oh, good point.
The determination and tenacity and getting up in the morning and getting to work is a common thread. Absolutely. Well said.
All right. And just kind of in our little wrap up here, what kind of projects are you working on today, these days?
I do a lot of overdubs for people all over the world, and always working on one or finishing one of those up. But today I am working on Chris Nole's new project, and I've been working on drum tracks for my existing tracks, and yeah, it's like you say, there's so much to tweak.
Absolutely, especially when you're producing it yourself.
Yeah, that works for me because it fits my personality. But to be forced to make 1,000 decisions a week without much outside feedback is. But I've learned to do it over the years. It's the end result that matters, and don't ever. If you're working on your own project, you should spend the time on it to where you're never apologizing for it. I've seen people come in with a CD and, here, listen to this, but oh well, the mix ain't quite done, or oh, I could have sang it better. Work on it till you have no apologies.
Right, which, by the way, sometimes that means getting over yourself, too.
Yeah.
Which is where a producer can be helpful, because they'll force you to get over yourself from time to time. But
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I totally agree with that. If you're to the point where you don't have any confidence in what you're doing, then it's probably not ready yet.
It's probably not ready, or maybe you do need a producer.
Yeah,
That's
it's
okay,
either
too.
either it's not ready or you haven't grown the confidence in yourself yet to share it with anybody,
Yeah.
and it'll never be ready because of that.
I know, and I'm getting over that. I've been that animal. I've worked at it my whole life. I've worked with this singer a few years ago that was over the moon, man. This guy had charisma, chops, range, the look, the hair. And I said, man, why haven't you started on your own record? I mean, he was always hired to sing for other people. He said, man, I just don't think I could get it perfect. And it's like, man, you can't get it perfect. But it could be great. It don't have to be perfect. But it holds some people back. It really holds some people back. It's a shame.
Well, I only have two questions left for you here, Chris. First is, out of all these amazing people, both famous and not so famous, that you've worked with and met and gotten all, what are some of the names that you think have left the biggest impression on you, and why?
Well, I'll rattle off a few that you've touched on. John Denver really taught me how to be a more dynamic player. Louder is not always better. Sometimes the softer you hit a note or sing a note, the more people pay attention. And seeing my life today through all the people I've met and continue to work with because of him. So John really changed my life. And he made me a much better musician. I think when I joined John's band, I was just pounding it out every night, with these big bands, amplified bands, and, and John taught me, wow, man, there's low volume complements high volume. It's the dynamic range that really affects human emotion. And I still try to remember that on all my sessions. Faith Hill taught me, man, you could be good at your band, and you could be wide open to them and accessible to them, and make them feel included. Treat your musicians good because they'll give it back to you. And John treated his band amazing too. But I'm just trying to touch on different artists. And, Travis Tritt taught me, I don't give a what. I don't care who's listening or who ain't listening. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to put it right down your face. And sometimes, as a musician or a singer or front man, drummer, bass player, piano player, you just got to lay it out there, man.
There's a guy who never apologizes for his work.
No apologies. You're going to listen to me. But I could go on and on. They're all good, and I've all taken wonderful, wonderful things from the people I work with. And people that aren't famous. It's a quality person, you always have something to take from and learn from.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
My last question is very simple. Is there anything that you'd like to offer up or talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Man, I enjoy the interview, and I enjoyed knowing you. This is a really cool new relationship, and I want to just say hi to all your followers and students and people that embrace what you do, because you're plugged into a good cat here. He cares about your playing, and he'll steer you right. And I'm talking about you, Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And other than that, check out my website. My homepage has some free downloads. Subscribe, talk to me, send me notes, listen to my music, and we can be friends too.
That's awesome. It's chrisnole.com, right?
Yes, sir.
That's just Chris, CHRISNOLE.com. So, and I'll make sure that I link that on both the YouTube version of this and inside my members portal. And Chris, I can't thank you enough, man. This has been a lot of fun. You're great. You're a great conversationalist, and you got a lot of great stories. And next time I'm out in Nash Vegas, I'll be sure to let you know. We'll have to get together, have a cup of coffee.
I'll show you around, man. I'll show you around.
I would love that. And you let me know if you're out in Lost Wages, too. I'll show you around. All right, buddy. Thank you so much. This has been Chris Nole. Thanks for watching Conversations with the Masters. And remember my prime directive, folks. If you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong. This is Piano Man Steve Lungrin. We'll see you later.